Welcome everybody to the Compitera webinar. We have 3 experts with us, and the topic for today is to look forward beyond the coronavirus and what is the world going to look like as we move out of coronavirus. My name is Anil Venner. I'm Managing Director here at Compitera. Compitera is an AI-driven pricing platform used by retailers to optimize price to make sure it's right for the client. They do this in order to secure new revenues and increase margin and sell-through rates. In Compitera, you'll find everybody's passionate about retail and technology. Myself, I have a degree in computer science and artificial intelligence, and part of a team that built and sold a category-leading retail business in Europe. Subsequently, have built and scaled several technology businesses. But enough about me. Let me introduce our panel. So I'll mic pass to the left on my screen first, which is Maciej. Perhaps you could introduce yourself.
Hi, Andy. I'm very much looking forward to our conversation. I'm Maciej. I've been working pricing for like 15 years now. First at the industry, then I moved to consulting. And now together with Wojciech, we are running the pricing practice at Movens Capital. It's a group of funds. But because of our expertise in pricing, we still run this executive pricing practice. Except for just doing pricing project, I also wrote 2 books on pricing. I teach pricing at different universities like Stanford, like London Business School. I have PhDs in pricing, so maybe that's about me.
Great, thanks, Maciej. So having built your own pricing practice acquired by PwC, impressive academic background, but also focused in consulting with businesses. So it's great to meet you. And next on my screen is Harold.
Yes, thank you for the introduction, Andrew. My name is Harold van Eijnenberg. I'm responsible as Director of Category Management for Camera Express. And Camera Express is a Dutch-based photo video retailer. We have stores in 20 countries, which include the Netherlands, Belgium, Luxembourg, and Germany. And therefore, pricing is very important for us, and pricing has become even more important since the start of the COVID-19 crisis, since this meant a huge switch of offline retail towards online retail. And therefore, pricing is one of our most important issues at the moment.
Thanks for the background, Harold. And also, what was your role in Camera Express? How did you come to join the business?
I had my own company, which I sold in 2018 to Camera Express. I was working with Compitera at that time already. So when I joined Camera Express in 2018, one of the most important things there to do was to develop a pricing strategy. And with help of Compitera, we developed a new pricing strategy, but this also drove the discussion in our executive board on what should be our pricing strategy and how do we then want to do our pricing strategy. So it meant a big step on top level of the company as well, working on a pricing strategy.
Interesting. So you founded the camera business that was then acquired by a larger competitor. And then actually you're advising the board on the larger business on tools and processes across the new group as it expands. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. And my previous company, we were a little bit further on how to do pricing and on how to develop a pricing strategy. So it helped me greatly to implement the strategy for Camera Express as well. And since we are working online in 9 channels, you obviously need something which helps you roll out this strategy in 9 countries without too much human interference.
Interesting. So it's often the way that the smaller, more innovative startup can move faster. So you talked about 30 countries, 9 channels. I look forward to hearing more about actually drawing back the curtain on what you really did and how you're scaling that. But let's move quickly to Wojciech and pass the mic to you.
Hi, everyone. And thanks for the introduction, Andrew. My name is Wojciech, and as Maciej already mentioned, we work together. And the common theme for us is twofold. On one hand side, we are running those investment funds. But on the other side, we both are passionate about pricing. And in my case, it's over 15 years, like with Maciej. And in more general, I have 20 plus years of experience in what I call profit and performance improvement. So everything around how to be more profitable. And the last 10, 15 years have been about pricing, because pricing for me is the lever to improve the profit. And I did that in various constellations. So like external advisor, let's call it pricing consultant. And also I spent a couple of years in the corporation being responsible for the corporate pricing or the pricing solution, including the tool. And my experience is beyond retail, because I did internal, external projects for retail, B2C, B2B, production, manufacturing, etc. And I see some commonalities at times, and at times specificities of a given business. So again, I'm passionate about pricing, so I could talk about that for quite a lot. But I pass the mic back to you.
Thank you, Wojciech. So the audience, we have a range of people I can see in the audience. So we have some pricing managers, some more senior director level members of retail businesses. So we have and some third-party consultants as well. So we have a range in the audience and on this panel. So from the entrepreneur who's built, sold, and now running a group of businesses, to the experts, the pricing experts. So it's a range of skills on this. So let's dive in. I think my first question really is to the, let's look at a couple of industries specifically. So perhaps Maciej, you were telling me before about your experience with a particular client in the pharmaceutical industry. By pharma, we're talking about B2C drugstores and pharmacies. Can you tell us more about that industry before coronavirus? What was happening in that industry and the challenges they were facing when you were working with that business?
Okay, so like for this client, just to just set the stage, they're leader for online sales in general as a pharmacy, and they have 150, 180 physical locations. And for them, it was like, okay, we need to manage our pricing independently for the online and a bit like independently for the offline. And maybe someday down the road, we'll integrate those two. And then like what happens, and they had some really healthy margins in the online. So you might think that after the corona hit, then it was an El Dorado for them. In a way, like it was, because like the online channel grew significantly. But what like grew even more strongly was the competitive landscape in the online. So now like everybody wanted to sell cosmetics and pharmaceutical OTCs online. So then they had to face even fiercer price pressure and price competition. So even though you might think they really benefited from the COVID thing, actually it wasn't so roses and rainbows.
Makes sense. So I think just thinking about before coronavirus, you're saying there was a trend already moving online. We, here in the UK, online prescription has become a thing now, which is fantastic. So, but still, most people go to the surgery. But the puck was heading in that direction for this kind of this home delivery or maybe some curbside pickup. So, but you're saying also there's low cost competitors coming into that market as well before coronavirus, and coronavirus has just sped it up. Would that be a fair summary?
Exactly. And then, of course, you had to kind of integrate a lot of things at the same time. So you can have, let's say, online deliveries, but for online deliveries, you have the challenge of, different, drugs or different products. They require some special handling. So you have to integrate that into the process. You also might to have like the physical, use the local pharmacies as a pickup point. If you do so, then you also have to arrange for that. How do you then integrate pricing into the picture? So what should be the price difference if you order online and pick up offline versus if you just go to the physical store and ask for a certain product? So there was a lot of things that we had to consider in the mix.
Interesting. So it is a very much an omni-channel business then, or move from an offline to omni-channel. There'll always be those offline touch points with regulated drugs. So with that in mind, how do you price in an omni-channel environment when you have online competitors very cheap, but in-store prices in the traditional are higher? How do you approach that in this particular case?
Okay, so like I think there are a couple of dimensions you need to consider. Obviously, you have to start with the strategy. I think for this one, like it would be Wojciech to better answer the question how to integrate the pricing strategy and move towards execution, because he's got plenty of recent experience around it. But I will more maybe focus here on just the tools. So like for those guys, they on the one hand they had just loads of data for the online. They also had lots of data for the offline. But when it came to like the price elasticities or like the shopping basket analysis, they hardly even done that because they thought like we still have a lot of time to learn how to do it. And then after the Corona thing happened, it all accelerated. The whole board put this pricing project on top of the agenda. We had like the status meetings with the board like every 3 days. So it's been really fun, I have to say. So because like every day, like we had to also like be able to swiftly adjust to the changing circumstances. So as you might remember, when the whole thing started, there were shortages in like toilet paper, all that stuff, some kind of washing detergents. But then so this is another thing. So for some items, you obviously had an increased demand. We call those essential items, or however you call them. And for those, everybody wants to purchase as much as possible and stock up. But then you also had those non-essential items. So what should you do in terms of pricing with those? You still want to sell those. So how do you work with just bundling those together, for instance? So how do you build those customer journeys on the both online and offline, so that you not only just sell the whole load of diapers, of toilet paper or something else, but also are able to add some other products into the basket. So that was another challenge. How do you work with the promotions, with the product suggestions? So a lot of interesting elements. Also, let's not forget that the important pricing lever for online is the delivery cost. So how do you set the threshold, for instance, for the free deliveries? Obviously, I guess, for Harold, that's not really an issue because he's selling, really high value items. Whereas, if you have let's say an average ticket of, let's say, less than 10 euros, then you cannot allow or afford to have like free deliveries for all. So how do you set it all up? It's all super interesting. So it turns out, for instance, that price per item is not really as important as how do you fit it into it with the cost of deliveries of like multi-packs, all those things. So
it's good setting the scene. So a whole range of challenges. I think a lot of people will resonate there, like the multi-channel nature of the new business, the essential versus unessential items, this accelerated deployment with multiple board meetings in a week, and the challenge of pricing delivery costs. Let's unpack those later. Let's bring Harold in and ask Harold, can you give us a bit of an overview of the business before coronavirus? So what were the trends you were seeing in the market, and can you give us a bit more feel for the shape of your business?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, well, obviously we have 20 stores, and our model was like 55% offline and 45% offline. And obviously through the coronavirus, this constantly changed, because first our Belgium stores were closed, then our Dutch stores were closed, then Luxembourg and Germany. So we ended up with all stores being closed. But what we saw, and that was really interesting, is that the complete turnover we lost through the closed stores was catched up through the online channel. So for us, it's very important to know that the demand for the products was still there, but it just shifted from offline to online. What we also saw is a huge shift in the type of products which were purchased. For instance, a higher price cameras, we saw a drop in these categories because these are products which are traditionally sold through offline channels. But we were also selling a lot of printers, and printers was a category which was increasing by 500 to 600%. And then we had the other issue, which was that there was a low supply of printers. So finding the optimum price level at that time was very important for us. But in a market where you have like 50 to 60 competitors, it's very difficult to find the right price position. So it changed a lot for us, but now we see shops opening again. And what we are seeing is that it's gradually shifting back towards percentages which we had before the coronavirus, but we are pretty sure we will never be at the 45% again. So what we expect is to be at the 60% to 65% online sales level and 35% offline.
Makes sense. And previously you were telling me about your market, the photo market is changing year on year, that actually the market side, the products people are after are very different. So my uncle is a passionate photographer. He'll spend 3 weeks in the Falkland Islands and spend 5,000 euros on a single lens and have a large basket around that. But actually with social platforms like TikTok, the industry is moving to a different kind of consumer, a different product and perhaps a different ownership model. Can you elaborate on that?
Yeah, absolutely. First, we saw the traditional photographer was like a major part of our sales. But since the coming of channels like TikTok, YouTube, we see a huge shift towards the content creators. And these content creators are way more important for us and becoming more important every year. And these are people which use their products in a different way. They want to have the right tool for the right job. So we also have a renting business, and what we saw is a tremendous increase in the renting business, but also a shift towards different types of products, where products like long lenses are traditionally used by photographers. What we see is from the cinema, we see the content creators are using wide-angle lenses. So that's also meant a shift in our assortment strategy, but also in our sourcing strategy with our suppliers.
Interesting. So you've got different brands are coming into the market, different ways, and a different consumer altogether. So that's kind of where the puck was going, the trajectory of the market before coronavirus. And with coronavirus, have you seen then a more rapid adoption of this new kind of probably more online, younger content creator, and how they?
Yes, definitely. We definitely saw a change in customer behavior, because the traditional older photography customer, he wants to buy his products in a store and he needs advice. And this new type of customer, which is obviously younger, and he is used to buying more online than offline. And what they do is they look at things like product reviews, and they use things like WhatsApp chat and video chats with our salespeople. So we definitely see a change in type of customers. Obviously, this will also change when we switch back towards more stores being open. But this is a change which will last in the future, we think.
So on the point of stores, so you mentioned you went gradually, all stores closed. Somehow you've retained your revenue, maybe just a small drop. But now, what's the role of stores now as you're beginning to open them? What's the plan? Has the plan changed to what it was before coronavirus?
Yes, well, obviously our plan changed, because before Corona crisis, we had a plan to expand in Germany, and our expansion plan was based on a rapid expansion of the number of stores. We slightly changed this view, and we think now we need less stores, but we need bigger stores where we can offer more experience. So So for instance, we first thought we needed around 14 to 15 stores in Germany. This has now changed to about 7 or 8 stores in Germany to cover the whole country. But these should be more experienced type of stores where you can offer education, training, and things like that, but also perhaps a room where people can record blogs or podcasts and things like that. So it's going to be more experience.
Interesting. Okay. So just one final question, Harold, and that's just to move to pricing, because it's clear that business has changed from having these mostly offline sales to mainly online with large stores supporting, but also you're in all these countries. So how have you approached the challenge of pricing, particularly given the map restrictions that exist around consumer electronics, and your relationship with manufacturers? Are there anything you'd like to share on the process of pricing?
Yeah, well, basically what we do, and what is one of the most important things, is you need to define who are your competitors, or who are the competitors you want to compare with. And this has been a process which is easy to do for us in Northern Europe, but in Southern Europe this was more important because the type of retailers are different. For instance, in our industry, a lot of photo cameras are sold in France by companies like Fnac or Amazon, whereas in Germany and the Netherlands you see the traditional photo retailer. So our complete pricing strategy we need to adopt to these local markets. And this also goes for Italy, where there is no photo retail and where there are only a few large online retailers. And you have to rethink your strategy. Do you want to compare with these competitors, or do you take a mix of them, or do you give them each a weight in your pricing strategy? And so for each country, we develop a new strategy.
Interesting. And the manufacturers, do they play a role?
They can't play a role, but we ask them for advice. So we ask them which are your main partners in each country, and this gives us some direction how to develop a pricing strategy.
Okay, very interesting. Thanks, Harold, for sharing. So perhaps if we move to Wojciech, so thinking if we go back to the pharmaceutical example, or even in consumer electronics, Wojciech, what was with this move now to a consumer expecting a similarity in pricing on an offline omni-channel, the difference of essential and non-essential products, how would you approach how do you approach all these challenges from a pricing and an assortment perspective?
Yeah, you know, that comes kind of back to the kind of sequence how you approach the pricing, and Harold already mentioned that, and Maciej also mentioned that the starting point is the strategy. And on the strategy, what I mean is you define your portfolio and what should you have in your portfolio, and maybe what do you don't have to have in your portfolio. So at times this even goes to the likes of cleansing your portfolio because it's just too broad, and some items are just not moving. So defining this one, what is in your portfolio and out of your portfolio, and then within the portfolio, again, the very primary split. Which are the items which kind of define your price perception? Okay, which items generate the traffic, both offline and online, and which are those ones where you can make margin because they are out of the very focused kind of price radar of the client or potential clients. So on one item you will just draw the client to your shop, being offline or online, or on the other one you will make more money. So defining and having the clear perception and on this one is very important. Okay, how you do that. And then the second thing is, as Harold mentioned, because one of the logics might be you are the same as your competition, a bit higher or a bit lower, but who is your competition? You can, and that's, I guess, Maciej can elaborate on that with the pharmacy client. If you define it too broad, then you are lost, because there is so many competitors out there that you don't know what to do. But then if you define a limited number of your real competitors, so like real alternative for your primary customer, being someone who is your customer or is about to be your customer would look for a couple of other alternatives. And what would they be? And if you define them properly, then your life is easier, because then you can even run scenarios more quickly, more efficiently, to see, okay, and compare the prices among those competitors. So that's how you define your starting point. And then again, based on the portfolio definition, you can apply various logics. And logics being like, being within the pack. So, matching the competition. The competition would be one approach. The other one would be maybe cost plus even. And the other one would be, because this is not a very fast moving item, but someone who wants to buy it will buy it for pretty much whatever price there is, so that they can do it in a given place. And then you apply this logic. And there are more sophisticated things, like in different kind of businesses. For example, what comes to mind in furniture business, for example, it could be the case, because people usually in cameras business, they might buy just one thing, the camera, and that's it. Or maybe the camera is some kind of lenses. In the furniture business, for example, they would buy, let's say, a sofa, and next to sofa they would buy something else, a small table, a nightstand, or something else. And then if you know what is the chain sort of number of items they buy together, you can play with that, because on some item you can add or lower to draw them, and then if you calculate the whole chain, you can just make money on this one. Okay, so this is the strategy bit, and then you can go, and I guess that could be the next question, to the process and organization and so on. So we can do it bit by bit.
Now, Wojciech, I'm going to stick with you for a moment, because and when we first met, here as a technology vendor, of course we're in love with our own technology and technology as a whole, but actually we forget that it's just a tool. It's just like a hammer, and you can't, some jobs don't need a hammer, they need a more refined tool or a blunter tool. So rather than just thinking technology first, you kind of taught us a process that you guys follow with your clients. Perhaps you could explain that to us now.
Yeah, some people think about, or some customers or clients think about a tool as a starting point, and I would call it, for the pricing, it's like with the pricing you need to be spot on, and spot on meaning T like technology or a tool is at the end of the spot. The first is S, and S stands for strategy. So that's the starting point. And for the strategy, one maybe thing to add, because if you ask, and that's an exercise we do with our partners and companies, what is your strategy? What are you aiming at? Is it the profit, the pure profit, or is it revenue? Is it volume? It's market share, or is it some combination of those? And if you ask people in the same organization, and I advise people, if you haven't done this exercise in your companies, do it and ask your people, where would you put your, the main focus? Market share, revenue, profit, or somewhere in between? And ask the people from marketing, from sales, and from yet another department, and ask them what was the last year, this year, and what would be the next year. And you would see potentially the differences. You can draw some insights from that. But that's S, okay? And just the strategy, it's just a strategy, and before it gets implemented, it's just a piece of paper or some thoughts in the head of someone. So you need the process to implement that. And by process, I mean, yes, steps and sequence to do this. And in terms of retail, not only retail, it's broader than that. There will be processes like 1 year plan. So how do you do that? Again, how do you plan your portfolio? How you differentiate the types and segments of your portfolio? Then you would do some adjustments quarterly, monthly, and then in the dynamic pricing, dynamic environment, you might do it even weekly or even daily. And so that's, again, another piece of the process. So you define the sequence. How do you plan? Top down, bottom up, and then run some scenarios, get some knowledge from the market regarding the price elasticities, and then again run or rerun the calculation to make sure how you make your budget, and then play with the portfolio, with the regular sales, promotional sales, things like this. So that's the process, and then and that's P. Okay, so we have S and P, and then yet another letter is organization. O, because in order to do that, it will not do it just itself, and none of the tool will do all of that by like waving the magic wand. So you need to have people, organization, and exactly define who would do what, and then progress with the process. And then eventually you might have a tool, and the tool, once the strategy, process, and organization is defined, then the tool could be very, very helpful, because then it won't be a hammer with which you can hurt yourself, but it would be really, really useful to run scenarios, analysis, various options to let you achieve your strategy goals. So being really good at that means being spot on. Strategy, process, organization, and tool, technology.
Good acronym. Thanks, Wojciech. So let's perhaps now we can head over to either Harold or Maciej. So we've looked at where the markets were going and how coronavirus has affected, and then we're going to get a flavour of how particularly in Harold, how you're building the business for the future. So perhaps you can have a look at pricing now. To what extent has pricing become? How important is it as you now architect the business going forward in electronics and in the pharmaceutical? And from that, any advice that you'd share for members of our audience?
So who goes first? Harold?
Yes. Okay. Well, first of all, I really recognize the story Wojciech told, because this was a process we also went through. And the most important thing for us there was the discussion between profit, turnover, and market share. And we still have this discussion on a daily basis, but we also add in some other things, which is, for instance, what is the costs to sell the items in a category. So we take more things into account, and we develop a pricing strategy per category, or sometimes even per product. So for us, pricing has become more and more important. And when we were learning and doing this process, we also recognize we need to keep ourselves developing on this topic, because it's getting more complicated and your competitors are getting smarter as well. And since everything becomes more transparent, we constantly need to improve what we are doing and trying to outbeat the competition.
Okay, so if I can add to this one, I think also the theme of the conversation today is not only to dwell about the whole Corona thing, but also how to prepare for the future. And what I see with a lot of companies is obviously they put a lot of effort to just managing the current emergency situation that they're handling. But what they sometimes forget about is that hopefully one day hopefully sooner than later, the whole thing will just get over. And what will be your plan for that? And probably like what you might expect, what we would recommend, first of all, is to anticipate and plan ahead, like what you want to do. Like imagine with Harold, so in 1 month, all your stores are going to be open. So how do you want to just actively just manage for that? Or imagine that it's going to take for another half a year. So what I'm saying is that we need to have a couple of scenarios, what to do in kind of various options, rather than just just be waiting for how the situation evolves without any tools to to kind of actively manage for that. So like as it said somewhere, the best way to kind of to prepare for the future is to kind of create it. So you can really create your own future in terms of pricing and your revenue strategy and to market strategy. But obviously, like, you have to have it ready, and once the life's gonna get back to whatever kind of normal, you can just hit the start or on button, and then it just rolls out. And otherwise, what I expect, like a lot of companies, they will not be able to kind of swiftly change from this emergency kind of mode to the new normal mode.
Makes perfect sense. And just in the background, Maciej, so the audience knows, I've just enabled a couple of surveys. Be interesting to get some data points from the audience. So it's actually the first time we've used this software, so I'm not entirely sure how it appears on your side, but you should see somewhere in here, draw your attention to two things. One is there's a chat box, so any questions, feel free to ask them. And then second is the survey. Be curious to see what answers everyone puts into those. Now on questions, there is a way for us to actually switch this from webinar view to meeting to allow people to use the microphone and speak. We may try that. We're breaking new ground here for us using this tech, but it'd be great to hear some voices if there are any questions. So prepare those. If you'd rather not speak, feel free to pop them into the chat box. So I want to continue this theme of looking ahead as well. So Harold, can I come back to you? Are there any, so thinking about the process you were going and with your team, looking at, is this revenue, is this margin, is it volume, in an environment where products are changing, channels are changing, and do you have any kind of, what would be your top couple of pieces of advice for people facing a similar situation?
Yeah, well, I think it depends a lot on which industry you are in. So I can talk a little bit about the electronics industry because I've been there quite a few years. But for us as a company, we operate on a European level. So for us, market shares are important, especially if you take into account that our strategy is to strongly grow in Germany. Then we need to have a pricing strategy which is adopting that way. So for us in Germany, the market share is the most important. But for the Netherlands, for instance, we are a market leader with more than 30% market share. And for us in the Netherlands, it's the most important to keep our market share and therefore not outprice ourselves, but also not underprice ourselves. So we take a different approach for each country, also depending on, do we have stores in these countries or not, or are we a pure online player in that country? So we take a different approach for each country in Europe, and you also see different competitors behaving in a different way. So it's not something you can develop for each country in the same way. You really need to look at how the market looks like, which competitors are active, and what your strategy is. And therefore, I also fully agree with Maciej. You can develop your own future, and that's also the way we look at it. We don't want to be dependent on what the competition is doing. We want to have our own strategy and keep on developing our own strategy.
Makes sense. And what about the team setup, Harold? So you've got with multiple, expanding into a country whilst consolidating and increasing margin into another. Do you have local experts? How do you structure this between either a centralized business, perhaps PE backed, that's got centralized goals, but then actually having regional variances? How do you do that from a talent perspective?
That's a good question, and also something we have been thinking about the last 3 months, because we know we want to expand in Germany. So we obviously end up with having a German pricing specialist. The way we do it now is each of my buyers does their pricing themselves. But obviously Germany is way too big to do it yourself. So we need a specialist for Germany. So what we are looking at is expanding the team with a German pricing specialist and with a French pricing specialist, just to help grow that business there.
So for all those pricing experts, listening to us, just reach out to Harold, and if you want to join an excellent team.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And in Competera, we're always hiring as well. So if you're a price,
okay, so we can also join. So whoever you want to join, it's not like a beauty contest, but yeah, but feel free to reach out to us if you're searching for a pricing assignment.
Because this is. I mean, I'm basically just copying what Wojciech says here in the SPOT strategy, process, organization. So, and with the organization, if we back up to the process, I'll sit in a virtual Zoom for 5 hours a day with 4 or 5 different calls with retailers around the world. Normally it's a virtual room. You can't see my curtains. This is, I think, one of the first times. So apologies to everyone who's got the inside of my kitchen. But the one thread that comes out a lot is local, delegated, almost store level autonomy around price, which is then biased towards local kind of margin targets and also gut feel of what local competitors are doing. And there is a theme of, if we are going to create a new process, a new strategy and a new process, we need actually to have a centralized new function that specializes in this. So I'm thinking here, Wojciech and Maciej, as you do the spot process with your clients, is this a theme that you would recommend bringing a centralized function? So perhaps Harold will have a DACH-based pricing expert, but reporting into a central team rather than a local store.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so maybe I'll just give one case, and then Wojciech, you can
Sure.
answer how we kind of approach it. So I will give you one case of a project that we've done for, let's say, sports and leisure distributor, like a big brand you all probably heard about. And then, so they were building a pricing function centrally, and they were launching a sophisticated software tool and stuff. But still, there was a lot of power, like historically, within the store managers. So, like what they said, just kind of, screw you. Like, no, we know better how to do pricing in our own, city. So no tool will do it better than we do. So then, we did 2 things. First of all, for a couple of products, they still had flexibility for their pricing. But the other thing, we played a bit of game with them. Okay, so let's just play a game. Who's better at pricing, whether we with the tool or you with your gut feeling. So apparently, like the gut feeling was not inferior to the tool. So we actually won, but still they wanted to have this flexibility to kind of have a feeling that they have an authority to set the pricing themselves. So we just gave the recommendations, so to say, and they still had to physically approve those. So this is just one case, but I think Wojciech can answer more broadly how we approach it.
Yes, I would answer this question. Fortunately or unfortunately, like Loya says, it depends. And it depends on the, among other things, it depends on the organizational and culture, because none of the organizations are equal or the same. I would maybe answer it this way, that it's good or plus, and the advantage of the centralized pricing function is because usually if you centralize, you can get more advanced or sophisticated and experienced person or people in pricing. Okay, so there is some more skill or skills in that respect, and that person or that group of people can design it more, more in a more advanced way. So that's a good thing. But on the other hand, depending, of course, about how big and broad is the organization, some people localized or centrally in headquarters might not fully get the picture of the local specificities. So then kind of a mix is probably the best solution. And here I'm thinking about, and that's coming also about the tool, supporting tool. If you define a common approach, not kind of template approach, but common approach with what kind of strategies or tactics you have in the menu, and with the parameters, and that the parameters can change, or that the products can change, or the list of the products in a given product category, being margin drivers or traffic drivers, can differ, but at least the approach is the same. And then this approach you can apply in any given country or market, and then a person who is dealing with this market kind of deals with the same or based on the same platform, and that what helps also communicate and exchange knowledge, experiences, and so on. So to answer this question, still not giving you a silver bullet, I would say if you can marry the two, so having someone centralized approach, I guess, would be the best thing here, with people or person being on the local level and fine-tuning and helping calibrate the approach per market would be probably the best approach.
Yeah, thanks, Wojciech. And we often use the phrase in Competera about co-piloting. So we're not the pilot, we're not going to steer the plane. What we are is a very sophisticated set of AI neural technology that's using to make recommendations. And this is happening in all industries. In digital health, there's some incredible advancements in how deep learning is being used in Moorfields Eye Hospital to recognize problems with the eye way before a human, even with best technology, can spot it. But the machine can't make the diagnosis. It cannot take control. It's not going to fly the plane. And for pricing, we'll never, take control of the price, but we'll make recommendations and try and make those as transparent as possible. So thinking in an organization, the old way is, gut feeling. Retail is the oldest industry probably on the planet, is buying and selling and trading, along with agriculture. So, there's a finely tuned gut instinct of what's right by these professionals. But what we have as well is a huge amount of data that sits in SAP and on these data warehouses. And when we use modern machine learning and deep learning techniques within AI, the results can be astonishing. And so we just give that pricing manager some more data that hopefully will reinforce their gut, or maybe adjust course a little. But those small adjustments over a large enterprise, we see, produce, vast results, impressive results. So there is a journey from that local store manager to centralized, and then making sure they work together in this collaborative, co-pilot approach, we like to put it.
Yeah, I guess, if I can elaborate on that, I guess co-piloting is a good, description of the potential approach. And two things come to mind. We often use a phrase like human intervention, because you can have the best, tool, the best algorithm, and then a lot of data. Still, at the end of the day, someone needs to just cast a look whether that makes sense, and then say, press the button, apply more automatically, or maybe adjust because there is some more than this system or can develop using whatever logic. So with that's I guess would be my additional comment to this one.
Great. So we are been going for 50 minutes. Average attention span is 40 to 45. So we should probably start wrapping up now. I do want to give a chance for any questions to come through. I'm not sure there are, which is fine. Thanks for those people who've put answers into the survey. We have a few data points, and they're kind of pointing in the direction we assume they would be in terms of impact of coronavirus decreasing most between 0 and 20%. Second highest is above 20%. Actually, nobody's seen increases in the audience. In terms of looking at where are we going in the future in a pricing context, I'm curious to see some people have already deployed artificial intelligence into into their process. Fantastic. Probably not surprising because they've heard from us about this webinar. Therefore, and we are the market leader for AI-driven pricing. But actually, others are considering it too. And nobody yet has said no to, we're not going to do it, which is, although there's not many data points coming through. So this is what we see across all industries. When you're looking for the price of a plane, there are no people in spreadsheets using a cost plus methodology of pricing. Same when we're booking into a hotel. These are dynamic pricing and very smart algorithms doing that. Amazon is already doing this, and market leaders are investing. Well, some of the biggest brands in the world have built their own data science team over the last 10 years. That's not needed anymore. There are more options. And kind of one of the closing comments from my side is, spent a couple of decades now building technology solutions. Is no one system does everything. So do look for the best of breed. I want to build a business that tried to create one single platform, and it was very difficult to compete against the best of breed. So do look for, don't be tied in by a single vendor or everything. Do look for the best in the market, but check they do have the services and the creds to deliver. So speak to customers, etc., etc. So enough for me, though, talking about that. I think here, just any final comments from the panel before we finish. So any closing comments, you guys?
No, I just think, like what I usually say is price is a mix of art and science, so like you need to have the science part, so like the great tools, but also it's still, you need to have this art part. So yeah, hopefully you will be you will just be able to manage swiftly through those two.
Yeah, what I can only just maybe a bit repeat myself. I found it kind of comprehensive to look through the spot. So if you guys do pricing, just remember the spot thing, because all the 4 elements are important: the strategy, the process, organization, and eventually the tool. Because with the great tool, you can have greater results. Just in order to use the tool properly, you need the 3 before. So be spot on.
Perfect.
So if I just may add on what Wojciech told, well, for us, the whole process talking about pricing and thinking about pricing has been really important also as a way of common understanding within our management team. Because obviously, well, my colleague from logistics, he has a really different way of thinking about pricing than our CEO. So and our financial director also has another way of thinking about what is important in pricing. So it was really important to bring a discussion to the table as well on a board level. So, and I can advise it to everybody to just take one day to talk about pricing and margin and market share and things like that.
Great insights. Yeah, the lack of alignment in a company is one of the #1 reasons we see for delayed projects. And the market's moving this way. Your competition probably is deploying, if not deployed already. So it's kind of get that internal alignment, get the project kicked off. So let me say a big thank you to our audience. This platform can show me actually where you are in the world. So it's awesome to see such a spread across Europe, from Paris, London, Netherlands, Scandinavia, a number of colleagues coming in from Ukraine as well, including one of our new advisors, Emmanuel. It's a pleasure to see you here. So French guy, very well connected actually. And I think that leading European sports brand, I think maybe you and Emmanuel should talk about Maciej. It's a great guy. So thanks to our audience for spending the time. Any questions to any of our panel, feel free to reach out to us. And also a big thank you to Harold, Wojciech, and Maciej for spending the time with us today. It's been a real pleasure.
Yeah, thanks, Andy, for making it happen and for just inviting us. So it's been a pleasure.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you, Andrew.
Thanks all. Have a nice evening.
Thanks.